Meanings of the Quran Volume 1. Surah 2 verse 6 to 7 Chapter 2. By Allama Ahmed Parwez. Translated in English by Dr. Ejaz Rasool. Audiobook made by Abid Hussain. 3 Chapter 3, The Kufr, verses 2:6, 7. The next verse states, As to those who reject, it is the same to them whether you warn them or do not warn them, they will not accept Iman. 2:6. The Quran has divided mankind into two fundamental categories, Kafir and Momin. It is He who has created you, and of you are some that are Kafir, and some that are Momin, and Allah sees well all that you do. 64:2. There can be many subdivisions of these basic categories, but these are principally the two types of human beings, one that accepts the truth of the eternal values of Allah revealed in Wahi, the Quran, and the other being those who reject these. This is what is referred to as the two-nation ideology, i.e., Muslim and non-Muslim. This verse, 2:6, is commonly translated like this: for those people who are kafir, it is equal to them whether you warn them or not, they are not going to accept Iman. As we have seen before, there was an objection raised due to the apparent meaning of 2:2, that those people who are already muttaqi, what need do they have for guidance? Guidance is for those who are astray. The answer to this has been given earlier. 3.1 The objection. A far greater objection than this arises as a result of the common translation and apparent meaning of this verse, 2:6. It is said that it is all the same to the kufr, non-Muslims, whether they are preached to about guidance or not, they will never accept Iman, so is the need for guidance then for Muslims. A further objection which arises from this is that at the time of the revelation of the Quran, all were non-Muslim. If it was all the same to them whether they were preached to or not, then what was the aim of the Quran being sent down and the preaching through Rasool? Additionally, the next part of the verse, La yuminun, is contrary to what happened, as it was those same people who became Momin by accepting Iman. It is clear from these explanations that this is not the correct meaning of this verse. For its correct meaning, look again at the explanations which have been presented in reference to Iman. It was said there that Iman is the name for acceptance of the truth about facts with the intention of the heart and using one's own choice. In other words, no individual can become a Momin until he accepts these truths without any coercion or compulsion, using his own choice and intent. It was from this point of view that it was stated that no individual can become a Momin merely due to being born in the home of Muslims. For this, some action has to be taken. This is exactly the same position for kufr also. For this, too, the Quran has used the verb, as action, grammatically, kafara, yakfiru, etc., in other words, he chose kufr. Hence, kufr is also an ideology of life, even if it is the opposite of Iman, a philosophy of life, a maslak and a system. The one who adopts this using his choice and intent is called a kafir. He, too, is not a kafir by birth. It is important to reiterate here that from the point of view of national identity, Muslim and non-Muslim become divided into two groups with respect to their birth, and it is important to bear this difference and distinction in mind also. But from the point of view of the Quran, the fundamental mode of being of a kafir and Momin should not be ignored. According to this state, the meaning of the verse 2:6 being analyzed is that for those people who choose the maslak and system of kufr through their own choice and intent, and then become obdurate in their stance and do not wish to hear anything against it, the preaching of guidance cannot have any influence on them until the time that they are agreeable to listen to the subject matter and are willing to reflect on it. Just bring to mind again the example of someone committing suicide. It will be said about him that it is all the same to him whether someone warns him about the dangers of drowning or not, he will not pay heed to any such warning. 3.2 The meaning of kufr. We have to see what it is that is called kufr according to the Quran, and who are those people on whom preaching about the guidance cannot have any effect. The basic meaning of kufrun is to hide and to cover. From this respect, night is called kafirun because its darkness places a cloak over all things. The grave is also called al-kufru because the corpse is put in it and hidden within it. Even a farmer is called a kafirun because he conceals the seed in the soil. As a result of the meaning of hiding, its definition also came to include denial, because the individual who hides something denies that it is with him. Since denial is the opposite of acceptance, hence in Quranic terminology kufr is the opposite of iman. And when this denial reaches the stage of confrontation, then such an individual adopts rebellion. This is why kafara means that he adopted rebellion against the system of Allah. Kufrun is also used in opposition to shukrun, hence shukr means for something to rise up and appear in front. Therefore, kufr of na'ima means the concealment of the bounties of Allah, to not keep these available for the good of universal mankind. This is called kufri namat. There are other derivatives of this root, kfr, as well, but at this point in time we will limit ourselves to these meanings which are essential for understanding the verse under view. We have seen above that the meaning of kufrun is to hide away, to deny. It is obvious that only those matters can be hidden about which man has knowledge, and denial can also be only of them. The question of concealment or denial of those matters about which someone has no knowledge whatsoever does not even arise. Therefore the meaning of kufr will be that the Quranic truths should be within someone's knowledge, and that he either hides them or denies them. 3.3 It is essential to have knowledge of the guidance. It is stated in Surah Muhammad. Those who reject Allah, hinder men from the path of Allah, and resist the messenger after guidance has been clearly shown to them will not hurt Allah in the least, but he will make their deeds of no effect. 47:32. It is stated in Surah Al-An'am. O you assembly of inhabitants of rural and urban dwellings! Came there not unto you messengers from amongst you, setting forth unto you my signs, and warning you of the meeting of this day of yours? They will say, we bear witness against ourselves. It was the life of this world that deceived them. So against themselves will they bear witness that they were kafirun. 6:130. Men will be questioned, whether they are from nomadic tribes, jinn, or from urban habitations of cities, ins what, did not such messengers come to you, who presented our laws before you, and informed you clearly that the outcome of adopting a path against these laws will be destruction and ruin? They will attest to this and will say, yes, this did take place. However, the vested interests of physical life kept them in deception, and so despite this, they adopted the maslak of kafr, and in this way they will give evidence against themselves. And after this it is stated, this is so because your Rabb would not destroy for their wrongdoing men's habitations whilst their occupants were unwarned. 6:131. This is so because it is not the way of Allah that he should destroy some nation without warning them about the consequences of their wrong system. Doing this will be injustice, and Allah does not do injustice to anyone. From this, too, the meaning of choosing kufr becomes evident, i.e., the condition for this is that the truth should have appeared before someone and they refuse to acknowledge it. Similarly, in Surah Mu'min it is stated, those in the fire will say to the keepers of hell, pray to your Rabb to lighten for us the penalty for a day. They will say, did there not come to you your messengers with clear signs? They will say, yes. They will reply, then pray, as you like. But the prayer of the kafirin is nothing but futile wandering in mazes of error. 40:49-50. The inhabitants of hell will appeal to the guardians of hell, could you not just petition Allah that he may mitigate this punishment of ours, even though it be for a day? They will say in reply that, tell us, did not Allah's messengers come to you with clear rationales? They will respond, yes, they did come. The guardians of hell will say, then go and beseech Allah yourselves, we cannot do such a thing. Why should we bother supplicating for the one who has deliberately and knowingly purchased destruction for himself? After this it is stated that having repudiated truths in this way, what result can the supplicating of those treading on wrong paths produce? 3.4 Admonition and its propagation. Before moving on, it is important that the meanings of the word Ansar which appears in this verse, 2:6, are also clarified, i.e. it is the same to them whether you warn, Nazar, them or do not warn them. As stated above, the customary meaning of this is that of frightening them. The correct meaning does not become evident from making them fearful. The meanings of Ansar are to apprise someone of the potential harm or loss in some matter before its occurrence, and in this way to forewarn him about the dangerous outcomes. The vanguard which routinely traveled ahead of an army so that it could warn it by detecting the movements and activities of the enemy, used to be called Naziratul Jaish. In the previous pages this reality has been clarified that, according to the law of requital of Allah, there is a consequence of every deed of man, and an outcome of every system. The messengers of Allah used to warn people according to the wahi of Allah that the consequence of your wrong path will be destructive, whereas the outcome of the righteous path will be prosperous. According to the former, they used to be called Nazir, warners, i.e. the one warning about the calamitous effects of their wrong path, and according to the latter, Bashir, i.e. the one giving glad tidings of the propitious results of treading on the right path. Based on this, the meanings of Ansarun will be to apprise or warn, not merely to frighten. This fact is stated with such succinctness and eloquence in a verse of Surah Yasin that by reflecting on it the intellect and vision become entranced. It is stated that this Quran has been sent down so that it may give warning to any, who are, alive, and that the charge may be proved against those who are kafirin. 36:70. In other words, whichever individual or nation still retains the potential to remain alive, they should be made aware how the wrong path on which they are treading is leading them towards the destruction and ruin of hell. And then whoever, despite this, refuses to abandon this wrong path, this fact should become ultimately evident to them that whatever the warner had said was indeed true. In other words, tanzir, warning, can only be of benefit to the one who is desirous of being alive. 3.5 The human self. Let us move forward. It has also been stated earlier that there are fundamentally two doctrines in relation to human life. One doctrine is that the life of a human being remains busy in movement and action under the obedience of physical laws, and when this machinery ceases to function, according to these same laws, then that is called death, as a result of which this person ceases to exist. This is called Western materialism, secularism, or communism. The second doctrine is that man is not just defined by his body, other than the body, there is another thing within him which is called his self, nafs, or, in the terminology of Iqbal, his khudi, ego. This is neither a product of physical laws, nor is it under the control of these laws. This is the fountainhead of human intent and choice, and it is on this that the result of every deed of man is, you could say, imprinted. It is not impacted in the slightest by the death of the body. This continues forward, taking these imprints of this individual's deeds with it. This is called the life of the hereafter, in which its rank is defined according to these imprints of which it is the possessor. This is the Quranic doctrine of life. The development of the human self is the purpose and goal of the Quranic program. This fact is clarified in two succinct verses of Surah Ash-Shams. Truly he succeeds that purifies it, and he fails that corrupts it. 91:9-10. The one who has developed his self, his field has achieved fruition. Whoever submerged it under the dust of material interests, his human potentials remained buried, undeveloped. It is clear from this that kufr means to hide eternal truths, and the denial or suppression of one's own self. It is on the basis of this that life at an animal level is called kufr, i.e. that doctrine of life in which human life is taken to mean merely a physical life just like that of animals. It is stated in Surah Muhammad. While those who are kafir will enjoy this world, and eat as cattle eat, and the fire will be their abode. 47:12. The goal of life of those people who adopt the maslak of kufr is to eat and drink like animals and to benefit from the physical accoutrements of life, nothing more than this. What can their end be but the hell of destruction? At another place this doctrine of life, secularism, is explained in these words. And they say, what is there but our life in this world? We shall die and we live, and nothing but time can destroy us. But of that they have no knowledge, they merely conjecture. 45:24. These people say that life is only the life of this world. We remain alive in this and then the passage of time puts an end to us. Commenting on this, the Quran states that these people have no knowledge of the truth, they remain wandering in the dales of skepticism and conjecture. It has already been noted above that just like Iman, Kufr is also embraced through one's own intent and decision, and it is adopted at that juncture when knowledge of the reality has been acquired. Hence, it is stated in Surah Al-Kahf. Say, the truth is from your Rabb, let him who will, have Iman, and let him who will, reject it. 1829. Say to them that Al-Haq, eternal truth, has arrived before you, now whoever desires can accept it, have Iman in it, and whoever desires can deny it, engage in kufr. At another place it is stated, let there be no compulsion in deen, truth stands out clear from error. 2:256. The question of compulsion in the matter of ad-deen simply does not arise, the right and wrong paths have both been differentiated, one can choose whichever path one wishes, see also 16:106. 3.6 Against the doctrine of compulsion, Jabr. The Quran has severely admonished those people who adopt the doctrine of compulsion as a defense in order to avoid responsibility. For example, it is stated in Surah Al-An'am that those who give partners to Allah will say, if Allah had wished, we should not have given partners to him, nor would our fathers, nor should we have had any taboos. So did their ancestors argue falsely, until they tasted of our wrath. Say, have you any certain knowledge? If so, produce it before us. You follow nothing but conjecture, you do nothing but lie. 6:148. When those people who have chosen the path of shirk are asked why they have adopted this wrong path, in reply they say, what is our fault in this? If Allah had not wished this, then we, or our forefathers, would never have adopted this path. At this the Quran states that this is not anything new which these people are presenting as an excuse. Even before this, such people have passed by who used to talk in this way. But by talking like this they were not able to save themselves from the destructive consequences of their wrong path. Hence that destruction descended on them, and their doctrine of compulsion could not save them from it. After this the Quran states that this is all based on complete ignorance, tell them to enter the arena of knowledge, and if you truly have some evidence with you, then present it. The fact is that this belief of theirs is not based on knowledge and vision, it is merely conjecture and speculation, or a lie and false accusation, see also 43:20. It is one thing to not be the possessor of choice and intent, and it is another thing to not use this intent, or to create such an environment due to which this most lofty potential of man does not come into operation. We will deal later with the former. The Quran discusses the latter at great length and informs us how, despite man being the possessor of choice and intent, he himself makes this potential of his ineffective. The Quran tells us how this takes place, and how those who do this choose the path of kufr. Some examples of this are noted next. 3.6.1 Kufr by obedience of forefathers. By following in the footsteps of forefathers, taqlid, man surrenders his choice and intent himself. It is stated in Surah Al-Baqarah. When it is said to them, follow what Allah has revealed, they say, nay. We shall follow the ways of our fathers. What? Even though their fathers were void of wisdom and guidance. 2:170. When they are told to obey what Allah has sent down, the Quran, they reply, no, we are going to keep on following the same path on which we found our forefathers treading. Censuring this, it is stated that despite their forefathers not possessing intellect and vision, nor being on the correct path of wahi, they will continue to follow in their footsteps. In the next verse it is stated, The parable of those who are kafir is as if one were to shout like a goat herd to things that listen to nothing but calls and cries, deaf, dumb, and blind, they are void of wisdom. 2:171. This course of blindly following forefathers takes human beings to the level of animals, which simply do not possess the potential to make use of intellect and reasoning. 7:179. The parable of the religious clergy and their followers can be understood as follows, that there is a flock of sheep and goats behind which there is a shepherd. The shepherd has learned some sounds from his venerated elders devoid of words, and has memorized some words without any meanings. He keeps calling out these sounds, and keeps repeating these words, and the sheep and goats which are accustomed to these sounds keep turning this way and that way accordingly. Neither the shepherd knows what the meanings of these sounds and words are, nor are those sheep and goats capable of understanding anything other than these sounds. These are the ones who are followers of their forefathers, deaf, dumb, blind, making no use whatsoever of intellect and reasoning, who can call them human beings. 3.6.2 Mutrifin, exploiters. It is stated in Surah Al-Zukhruf that such a path is chosen by those who are mutrifin. Those who shirk hard work and live a life of ease at the expense of others are called mutrifin. To think about some matter using knowledge and intellect, and to then make a decision using one's choice and intent, demands great resolve and exertion, and to accept one's own responsibility demands great courage and determination. The maslak of taqlid is a very convenient path. In this one neither has to make any decision oneself, nor accept responsibility. But as a consequence of this ease, man deprives himself of that invaluable potential which is a line of differentiation between an animal and a human being, in other words, the ability to make choices and decisions. It is a declaration of the Quran that it is only such people who adopt the path of kufr, i.e., those who, despite possessing the potential of choice and intent, do not make use of it. 3.6.3 Overwhelmed by emotions. Now let us look at the second example of man not using his decision-making capacity correctly. The state of human decision-making is such that his sources of knowledge and information, hearing, observation etc., provide him with data. On the basis of these sources of information, the intellect of this individual reaches some kind of conclusion. In light of this conclusion, he makes a decision for himself. The resolve to carry out this decision is called intent. It is obvious from this that man's decision and intention are dependent on the correct functioning of his abilities of hearing and observing. If these abilities are not functioning correctly, then they neither provide accurate information, nor can the decision based on them be called a correct decision. Just observe some individual in a state of intoxication, of alcohol, what kind of information is supplied to him by his hearing and observation, and then what kinds of decisions does he make based on such information. And after that, what are his intentions? Leave aside the criticism about his intent and decisions by some third party, after recovering from the effects of alcohol, when he himself casts an eye on these, he becomes extremely remorseful that what is this that I have said and done. Intoxication does not only result from alcohol. Whenever, and through whatever circumstances human emotions overpower his intellect and thinking, they also acquire the shape of intoxication. At this point his intellect and thinking becomes paralyzed. In Surah Al-Qasas Rasool is told that he should give an invitation to the path of haqq and truth to these people, and after this it is stated, "But if they hearken not to you, know that they only follow their own lusts, and who is more astray than one who follows his own lusts, devoid of guidance from Allah?" 28:50. If these people do not accept your invitation, then take it as being that they are obeying their own desires. Remember, whoever does not keep his emotions under the control of the correct code of life, and leaves these unchecked for his vested interests, he cannot adopt the correct path. This is what is called kafir. This is about individuals. The Quran has also declared about nations that when some nation only views its own interest and ignores the divine values, then its state becomes like this. But of no profit to them were their faculties of hearing, sight, and heart and intellect, when they went on rejecting the signs of Allah, and they were, completely, encircled by that which they used to mock at. 46:26. Their hearing, seeing, and power to make decisions is of no help, these become paralyzed and ineffective, and this is the consequence of rejection and rebellion against the divine laws. They mock these laws and values, and the consequence of this is that the destructive effects of their wrong conduct encircle them from all sides. 3.6.4 Jealousy of the Jews. In connection with those who are overpowered by their emotions and adopt kufr, the Quran quotes the example of the people of the book, its first addressees, when it states, "Quite a number of the people of the book wish they could turn you, people, back to kufr after you have accepted iman from selfish envy after the truth has become manifest unto them." 2:109. These people of the book desire that the way in which they have chosen the path of kufr, your condition should also become the same. This is based on this jealousy whose fire keeps blazing in their hearts, even though haqq and truth have appeared clearly before them. The Quran has described one of the reasons for this jealousy, rancor, and arrogance of the Jews to be that they were immersed in this false mindset that Nubuwwat, messengerhood, will remain confined to the progeny of Ishaq. But Rasulullah was from the lineage of Bani Ismail, this is why the Jews simply could not bear it. The Quran states that they, and together with them the whole world, should know that messengerhood is not connected to any particular race, tribe, or family. This selection takes place according to the Mashi'at of Allah, which he terms as his fatal blessing. It is stated in Surah Al-Baqarah, "Miserable is the price for which they have sold their selves, in that they deny the revelation, which Allah has sent down, in insolent envy that Allah of his grace should send it to any of his servants he pleases." 2:90. These people are rejecting this revealed book of Allah purely due to arrogance, and this is a very evil bargain, i.e., such a bargain in which, by selling an entity of immense value, they are purchasing the means for the satisfaction of one single emotive desire of theirs. 3.6.5 Egotism. Arrogance is also one form of egotism. In this connection it is stated in Surah Al-Araf, "And certainly there came to them their messengers with clear signs, but they would not have iman in that which they had rejected before." 7:101. The messengers of Allah did come to them with clear facts and rationales, but they refused to acknowledge them merely due to their haughtiness and pride and declared that you are liars. After that those messengers reasoned with them 1,000 times, but since no had once been uttered from their lips, they therefore remained intransigent as a result of egotism and continued to keep on rejecting. The Quran has given a clear example of egotism relating to the account of the confrontation between Musa and Pharaoh. It is stated in Surah Al-Naml that Musa presented such clear rationales before the people of Pharaoh for which they had no answer, and they rejected them in iniquity and arrogance, though their inner selves were convinced thereof. 27:14. They kept on refusing to accept these even though their hearts concurred with them. They had come to recognize that what he is asserting is true. But their rebelliousness and egotism was acting as an impediment to the acceptance of truth. 3.6.6 Intoxication of power. When some nation acquires power through deceitfulness, and then in order to keep it established and strong continues to employ every kind of legitimate and illegitimate tactic, then that, too, does not adopt the path of truth and justice, it continues to reject it and undermine it. In Surah Fatir it is stated that the egotistic ones among the Arabs were like this. Before the appearance of Rasulullah, they used to continually swear that if some messenger of Allah comes in their direction, then you will see how we will become the best guided nation in the world. But when that messenger arrived, not only did they reject his invitation, but they began to display deep hatred and antagonism towards him, purely because they had authority in the land, and by the acceptance of this truth then that illegitimate power could no longer have been sustained. 35:42-43. These are the people about whom it is stated, "It is the same for them whether you warn them or do not warn them, they will not accept iman." 2:6. Those people who are captivated by their desires in this way. It is equal to them whether you warn them or not about the destructive consequences of their wrong path, their emotions of jealousy, hate, prejudice, animosity, vested interests, arrogance in the land, and intoxication of power do not leave any possibility that they can listen to something with their conscious mind and formulate a decision using a moral intellect. Just imagine for a moment this scene, that the streets are brightly lit, the road is like a carpet of light due to electric lights, but that a traveler shuts his eyes. Can this light be of any assistance to him? Will it not be said about him that it is the same for him whether the paths are lit or immersed in darkness? Such are those people about whom it is stated. Among them are some who pretend to listen to you, but can you cause the deaf to hear, even though they are without understanding? 1042. These people come and sit in your gatherings. It appears as if they are listening to your talks very attentively. But their condition is such that though their ears are in your direction, their thoughts are someplace else, the result being that neither your voice reaches their minds, nor do they gain anything from this according to their intellect and reasoning. O Rasool! Just think that those people who become deaf like this despite having ears, can they reap any benefit whatsoever from this preaching of yours? In the next verse it is stated, and among them are some who look at you, but can you guide the blind, even though they will not see? 1043. You are deep in conversation with them, and they are even gazing at you, but despite this they see nothing because their thoughts are elsewhere. O Rasool! Can you show the path to these kinds of blind people with eyes? 3.7 Nazar and Basra, Sight and Observation. The Quran has outlined such a refined difference between Nazar and Basra here for which appropriate words are not available in our language. The translation of both is that of seeing, but there is a great difference between seeing and observing. This is the expanse of the Arabic language and the selection of words by the Quran because of which it has termed one type of seeing as Nazar, in which thoughts are someplace else, and the other kind of seeing as Basra, in which thinking and comprehension are also included. You can differentiate between them by the words Basara and Basirat. It is stated in Surah Al-Rum. So verily you cannot make the dead to hear, nor can you make the deaf to hear the call, when they show their backs and turn away. Nor can you lead back the blind from their straying, only those will you make to hear, who have iman in our signs and submit their wills in Islam. 30:52-53. O Rasool! Just as you cannot make the dead to hear, similarly you cannot make these live humans hear, whom you call out to and they deliberately become deaf and turn away in such a manner as if they had never even heard you. In the same way, you also cannot guide these blind ones towards the straight path and take them out from the darknesses of misguidance, who despite possessing eyes, simply do not wish to see. Only those will pay attention to your teaching who, when bowing their heads to it, have accepted iman in the truth of this. In Surah Luqman it is stated, when our signs are rehearsed to such a one, he turns away in arrogance, as if he heard them not, as if there were deafness in both his ears, announce to him a grievous penalty. 31:7. Just consider the condition of that individual who, when he is presented with our laws, walks away with such extreme pride and arrogance as if he had never heard anything, as if his hearing is blocked by earplugs. But by doing this, how can he save himself from the destructive effects of his wrong path? After ingesting poison, man may ignore this warning 1,000 times, that poison causes death, the poison will of a surety show its effects. 3.8 Elucidation of reality through comparison. As has already been noted, one technique of the Quran is also to make reality evident through comparison. For example, it is stated in Surah Fatir, the blind and the seeing are not alike. 35:19. In the next two verses, nor are the depths of darkness and the light equal. 35:20. Nor are the shade and the heat of the sun alike. 35:21. And in the next verse, nor are alike those that are living and those that are dead. Allah can make any that He wills to hear, but you cannot make those to hear who are in graves. 35:22. It is Allah's law that only he who wishes to listen can hear. The one who dons a death shroud while alive and then reposes in a grave and thus becomes a corpse, who can make him hear? Who can make him see anything? These are those walking corpses for whom it is equivalent whether it is the same to them whether you warn them or do not warn them, they will not have iman. 2:6. For whom it is the same whether you warn them or not about the dangers on the path, when they simply do not wish to see or hear anything, then how will they accept your teaching? This Quran is the code of life for those human beings who are alive, 36:70, not for giving sermons in graveyards. 3.9 Should they be left to their state? A question arises here, should these people be left in this state of theirs, and then taking this to be the case, that the message of haqq and truth should not be passed on to them because doing so would be pointless? No. This is not the desire of the Quran. In these verses the Quran is describing the state of the psyche of these people and expressing their response. It does not say to Rasulullah, or other communicators of haqq, that by declaring them to be beyond reach, you should turn your back on them. The state of Rasulullah was like that of a compassionate physician, whose heart is troubled about why the patient is not swallowing his medicine, why does he not take precautions? The degree of intensity of Rasulullah's feelings was such that Allah himself had to inform him that you would only, perchance, fret yourself to death, following after them, in grief, if they do not have iman in this message. 18:6. But along with this it was also proclaimed. But proclaim, to them, this, truth that every self delivers itself to ruin by its own acts, 6:70. The response to your deep concern is only that you keep on reminding them about the ignored realities using the Quran, so that this may not happen that some individual becomes ruined because the truth did not reach him. In connection with the discussion on iman, we have seen that according to the Quran there are 5 fundamental constituents of iman: Allah, Malaika, the messengers, the books, and the hereafter. The rejection of all of them, or even one of them, is kafir. It is stated in Sura An-Nisa. Any who denies Allah, His Malaika, His books, His messengers, and the Day of Judgment, has gone far, far astray. 4:136. But the Quran has described so many aspects, and so many kinds of kafir, that its sphere becomes very wide, and not only are those whom we term as kafir or non-Muslim contained in this sphere, others also fall within it. At this point in time we are only presenting a few of these aspects, the rest will be discussed as they appear at their own places. 3.10 It is kafir to consider the universe as batil. One belief about the universe is that it has no external existence, it is just an illusion created by human thought. The Greek philosopher Plato is stated to be the originator of this doctrine, which in his terminology is called the theory of forms. This doctrine arose from there and gradually spread throughout the world, particularly in the world of mysticism. This is why in the Hindu philosophy of Vedanta the universe is called Maya or deception, or a dream of Ishvar or sport. The doctrine of unitary existence of the followers of mysticism is somewhat similar to this. Most of our poets, especially Persian, are influenced by this Platonic doctrine. The doctrine of the materialistic philosophers of the West is that this universe has come into existence purely by chance and is busy in motion via its own inner force. When this inner force ceases one day, then this will disintegrate into pieces and the entire structure of the universe will be annihilated. There is neither any purpose to its creation, nor is it busily engaged in motion according to some defined program, nor does it have any destination and aim. The Quran calls these concepts batil and proclaims them to be kafir. It is stated in Surah Sad. Not without purpose did we create heaven and earth and all between. That were the thought of those who do kafir. But woe to the unbelievers because of the fire of hell. 38:27, see also, 21:30. Contrary to this, the state of Mu'minin is such that they reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth, and in the alternation of the day and night while standing and sitting, lying down, in every state, and after persistent effort and investigation, they reach this conclusion that our Rab, not for naught have you created, all, this. 3:190-191. From this it is clear that according to the Quran it is kufr to consider the universe as an illusory thought or devoid of purpose and destination, batil. 3.11 Duality is kufr. The Quran states, O you who have iman, enter into Islam, system of deen, wholeheartedly, 2:208. This point is very important and merits profound reflection. After diagnosing your ailment, a physician specifies a prescription for you which consists of different components. It is necessary for the cure that you utilize this prescription in its entirety. If you use some components of this and discard others, then not only will your disease not be treated, it is also possible that you may in fact be harmed by this. This is the same condition of the Islamic system. The Quran is such a code of life which encompasses all aspects of human life. The state of the system which will be established according to it will also be such that no aspect of life will be out with the sphere of its rule and the domain of its implementation. Hence, this will have to be adopted fully. If such a situation is created where some of its components are made a part of one's own system, and other components are omitted, or some constituents of this system are adopted and the remainder are devised by our own selves, or constituents which are formulated by other people are borrowed, then not only will the system not establish its blissful results, instead, its consequence will be nothing other than humiliation and disgrace and destruction and ruin. The Quran also declares this path of duality to be kufr and proclaims this to be deserving of punishment. It is stated in Surah Al-Baqarah, then is it only a part of the book that you have iman in, and do you reject the rest? But what is the reward for those among you who behave like this but disgrace in this life? And on the day of judgment they shall be consigned to the most grievous penalty, 2:85. In another verse it is stated, this is because, when Allah was invoked as the only sovereign, whose laws are to be obeyed, you displayed kufr, but when partners were joined to him, you believed. The command is with Allah, Most High, Most Great. 40:12. When these people used to be invited to the one Allah, they used to display kufr, and when others were invoked alongside him, then they used to have iman in that. Remember, this path is of kufr and shirk, not of iman and tawheed. The path of iman is only this, that sovereignty and rule must be completely and practically of Allah the one and only. 3.12 Not establishing rule according to what Allah has sent down. And this is that supreme reality, by stating which in Surah Al-Ma'idah, a clear line of demarcation is drawn between kufr and iman. If any do fail to judge by the light of what Allah has revealed, the Quran, they are kafirun. 544. The aim and goal of the Quran is the unity of mankind, i.e., gathering mankind as one under the obedience of the divine values so that all these ruinous conflicts and bloodshed come to an end, which are the natural consequence of humanity being divided into different factions. As an initial step for this it shapes an ummah which it terms a Muslim ummah. The unity of this ummah is the manifestation of tawheed. 3.13 Sectarianism is shirk and kafir. This is why according to it sectarianism is considered to be shirk and kafir. It is stated clearly in Surah Al-Rum that, and be not you among those who join gods with Allah, shirk, those who split up their deen and become sects, each party rejoicing in that which is with itself. 30:31-32. At another place it has declared this sectarianism to be kafir, and has intensely opposed it in an instructive manner when it is stated, be not like those who are divided amongst themselves and fall into disputations after receiving clear signs. For them is a dreadful penalty, on the day when some faces will be lit up with white, and some faces will be in the gloom of black. To those whose faces will be black, will be said, did you reject iman after accepting it? Taste then the penalty for doing kafir. 3:105-106. O Jamaat Imamanin, do not be like those people who, after receiving clear teaching from Allah, fell into mutual disputation and in this way became divided into sects. The consequence of this will be a great devastation. Think of it as at the time of the manifestation of results, some faces will be bright and jubilant and some will be dejected and clouded. And these bleak ones will be those who, having created divisions, after accepting Iman, adopted kafir. They will be told to taste now the devastating consequence of your kafir. 3.14 Masjid-e error. While explaining the meaning of verse 2:3, under the subject of as-salat, we stated that salat is a manifestation of the unity of the ummah. Along with this we had also stated that unfortunately our present namas are a manifestation of sectarianism, and our mosques are the havens for this. The Quran has declared the construction of such mosques which lead to sectarianism within the ummah to be kafir, and this has been stated in relation to the construction of that mosque which was erected during the eminent time of Rasool with the aim of creating division. Regarding this mosque, the Quran has proclaimed, "And there are those who put up a masjid, mosque, by way of mischief and infidelity, to disunite the mu'mineen, and in preparation for one who warred against Allah and His Messenger aforetime." 9:107. This mosque is one which will harm the unity of the ummah, is a cause for division among the mu'mineen, therefore it is kafir, and understand it like this, that this is going to be a sanctuary for those people who were intent on warring against Allah and His Messenger. 3.15 The capitalist system and riba are kafir. In explanation of this same verse 2:3 of this surah, it was noted under the title of, "They keep their means of sustenance bestowed by us open for others," that the Quran presents a comprehensive economic system which is distinct and unique from other economic systems. This system uproots the capitalist system from its foundations. The foundation of the capitalist system is based on this ideology that capital also earns wealth. The Quran proclaims the system to be riba and declares it to be a maslak of kafir, such a maslak against which there is an eternal proclamation of war by the Islamic system. While referring to this capitalist system, the Quran has instructed the Jamaat-e-Mu'minin that, "O you who have iman, devour not usury, riba, doubled and multiplied, but fear Allah, that you may, truly, prosper. Fear the fire, which is prepared for those who are kafir." 3:130-131, see also, 2:279. In other words, keep yourselves clear of this system, otherwise you will also be thrown into that hell which has been prepared for the kafir. 3.16 Do not let the Quran be heard. After these overall characteristics, the Quran has informed us of one fundamental characteristic of the kafir as being that these people do their utmost to prevent the voice of the Quran from reaching the people. Hence, in Surah Fussilat it is stated, "Those who are kafir say, listen not to this Quran but talk at random in the midst of its reading, that you may gain the upper hand." 41:26. Those people who have chosen the maslak of kufr are not only opponents of the Quran themselves, they also tell others that you too should not listen to this Quran. And wherever an invitation is being extended towards this book, make such a commotion so that what is being said cannot reach the ears. This is one such technique through which you can overpower those who have chosen the maslak of the Quran. If the voice of the Quran becomes commonplace, then you will never be able to subdue them. 3.17 Kufr will not be able to overpower Mu'mineen. These people had thought of this ploy at that time when the Quran had proclaimed, "Let not those who are kafir think that they can get the better of the Mu'mineen, they will never frustrate them." 8:59. Those who choose the path of kufr should not fall prey to this false assumption that they will forge ahead of those who follow the Quran. Remember, even though they may attempt 1,000 stratagems, they will never cause them to become paralyzed and overwhelmed. After this the Quran emphasized to the Muslims that they should protect their frontiers with all their might, 8:60, 24:57, and then it decreed in very clear words, "And never will Allah grant to the Kafirin a way, to triumph, over the Mu'mineen." 4:141. After this guaranteed promise and clear-cut proclamation of Allah, present-day Muslims of the world should themselves decide, do they fulfill the criteria of Mu'minin? The criterion decreed by Allah is only one, and that is that no non-Muslim nation will be able to overpower the Muslim Ummah, Jamaat-e-Mu'minin. And today our condition is such that it is unlikely that there is any piece of land on the face of the earth in which the residing Muslim Ummah, no matter how vast or wide their states may be, are free from the influence and control of non-Muslims in one form or another, directly or indirectly. In any case, this was just to clarify a point. The Quran has made it crystal clear that Kufr and Islam are two distinct philosophies of life, two separate systems of life, and Mu'min and Kafir are two distinct nations or parties. He has called one Hizballah and the other Hizbush Shaitan, 58:19, 22. And has stated clearly and explicitly about Hizbush Shaitan that they are the worst enemy of your system. They will attempt every conceivable effort to make it fail and to eliminate it. It is obvious from this that regarding those people whose state the Quran describes as being this, can relations of friendship be established with them under any circumstances whatsoever? Absolutely not. The Quran has forbidden this with great strictness. 3.18 Kufr cannot be friends of Mu'minin. Apart from Rasulullah, the Quran has declared the life of Ibrahim and his companions as a balanced model for Muslims, and this is stated at that place where this announcement of theirs is presented before us. There is for you an excellent model in Ibrahim and those with him. When they said to their people, we are clear of you and of whatever you follow besides Allah, we have rejected you, and there has arisen, between us and you, a wedge and aversion forever, unless you have Iman in Allah and Him alone. 60:4. They announced to their people that we are extremely averse to both you and to all of those whose rule you are adopting after having abandoned Allah. There exists aversion and a wedge between you and us, and we do not wish to keep this concealed. This is such a manifest reality which we wish to broadcast throughout the world without any reservation. We openly and completely reject your maslak and system. This gulf between you and us will remain until the time that you also acquire Iman in one Allah like us. This is that point when it was stated to the Jamaat-e-Mu'minin. There is for you an excellent example, to follow, in Ibrahim and those with him, 60:4. This is why it was stated to Rasulullah. Follow the ways of Ibrahim, the true in Iman, 16:123. And the Jamaat-e-Mu'minin were instructed. And take you the station of Ibrahim as a model of life. 2:125. In order to achieve the status of Ibrahim, make the arena of life as the focal point of your exertions and pursuits. The Quran clarified this in the following words. O Jamaat-e-Mu'minin! Other than members of your Jamaat, do not make anyone else your confidant. These, other, people will leave no stone unturned in your destruction. The desire of their hearts is that you should suffer from such life-threatening troubles as a result of which your strength is crushed. Some words of hatred and vengeance appear spontaneously on their tongues, but what remains lying hidden within their hearts is far greater than this. We have described these matters clearly so that by using your intellect and awareness, you can take precautionary measures against them. Look. Never do this that you make them your friends. Even if you do resort to this, they will never make you their friend, although you have Iman on all those books which were sent down from the direction of Allah, and these also include those books which were sent down to your opponents, and by Yah. You do this with the sincerity of your heart, but their state is such that when they meet you, they say we also have Iman, in the Quran. And when they are not with you, they chew their fingers with intense hatred and anger against you. Tell them, go and perish in your anger. Allah knows what you manifest and what is concealed within your hearts. Your psychological dissonances and duplicitous life will become the means of your destruction. The state of the evil of their hidden self is such that even if something good touches you in passing, it severely displeases them. And if some trouble visits you, they are highly delighted by this. But you should not pay any attention to their words. If you remain steadfast in your program and wholeheartedly seek the protection of Allah's laws, then all their plots and intrigues will not be able to harm you in the slightest. The law of requital of Allah is encircling them from every direction. This is why results will be established according to it, and not according to their wishes. 3:117-119. In this connection, the Quran has stated this much. O Mu'mineen! Understand this truth well, that according to Allah's constitution, the distinction between us and others will not be based on race and blood relationships, rather it will be according to a shared ideology of life. Hence, even if your parents, brothers and sisters also prefer kufr over iman, then you also should not make them your friends. Remember, whoever, despite this warning, maintains friendly relationships with them, he will do an injustice to himself, because doing this will be equal to rebellion against Allah's law. O Rasool! Tell these people that if your fathers and mothers, sons, brothers, wives, and other relatives, and the wealth and riches which you earn, and that commerce the decline of which you fear, and those mansions which you are so fond of, if even any one of these things becomes dearer to you than Allah and His Messenger, the divine system, and more dear than striving in the cause of its establishment and strengthening, then wait for the consequences of this path of yours to materialize at the time of manifestation of results according to the divine law. Remember, Allah never shows the path of success and prosperity to that nation which slips away in any direction after leaving the right path. 9:23-24. Following these kinds of teachings, instructions, and warnings, Allah had such a great degree of assurance of the firmness of iman of resolute and true mu'mineen that He declared with the fullest confidence and trust. You will never see that those people who have iman in Allah and the hereafter will maintain friendly relationships with those who are willing to wage war against Allah and His Messenger. The system of Allah, regardless of whether they are their parents, children, brothers and sisters, or other family members. This is because these are the people in whom iman has penetrated the depths of their hearts. Allah's wahi becomes a source of strength for them in every aspect of their life, the consequence of which are eternal springs of Jannat, unfamiliar with autumns. In summary, Allah is well pleased with them and they with Allah. These are the very people who are called Hizb Allah, the party of Allah. And it is obvious that Allah's party always remains successful and prosperous. 58:22. 3.19 The conduct of hypocrites. It also becomes clear from the Quran that hypocrites had also joined in with the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. It appears as if they perhaps used to spread such ideas in this Jamaat that the whole world is against us, if we establish friendly relations with the kufr nearest to us, i.e. the Quraysh etc. Then we will gain strength through this. It is also possible that they may have secretly established these kinds of contacts and connections with them. The Quran exposed these kinds of mischievous whisperings of theirs and informed the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen to remember that they are those hypocrites who, as to those who take for friends kafireen rather than mu'mineen, is it power they seek among them? Nay, all power is with Allah. 4:139. Those people who, leaving the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, make the kufr as their friends, do they do this because they think that they will gain some strength by this? Let them know that strength in totality will only be achieved by adhering to Allah's system, not by establishing friendly relations with the opponents. Such relations absolutely cannot be established with them. 3.20 There can be no compromise. At this point it is also necessary to clarify that pacts can be made with non-Muslim nations, and social relationships can be maintained with them at the basic human level within the limits of the Quran. But they cannot be made trusted companions and sharers of confidential matters, and it is on this very basis that they cannot be included in the business of the Islamic government. Islam does not contain any flexibility in relation to its principles, therefore, there can also be no compromise with non-Muslims in this respect. In Sura Yunus it is stated, "But when our clear signs are rehearsed unto them, those who rest not their hope on their meeting with us, say, Bring us a reading, Quran, other than this, or change this. 10:15. When the laws of Allah are presented before the people, those who do not have iman in Allah's law of requital say to Rasulullah that as we cannot accept the laws and values of the Quran, if you wish to deal with us then either bring some other Quran in place of this one, or at least make some changes in this according to our desire, then we will join with you. In reply to this it is stated, say to them, it is not for me, of my own accord, to change it. I follow naught but what is revealed unto me. If I were to disobey my Rabb, I should myself fear the penalty of a great day. 10:15. O Rasool, say to them that this is simply not within my authority that I could make any change in the Quran from my side. My duty is to follow this Quran. If I go against it, then I, too, fear the destructive consequences, because I will not be able to save myself from these either, therefore I cannot do such a thing. At another place it is stated, their desire is that you should be pliant, so would they be pliant. 68:9. They desire that you waver somewhat from your stance, and they should move somewhat from their position, and in this way a mutual compromise is made. In this respect Rasulullah was informed, and incline not to those who do wrong, or the fire will seize you. 11:113. See to it that you do not incline in the slightest towards them. If you move even slightly from your stance, then you too will plunge into that same hell towards which they are heading. The truth is that there can never be any compromise between haqq and batil. If batil moves from its position, then nothing affects it, but if haqq moves even slightly from its place, then it no longer remains as haqq. The fundamental meaning of haqq is precisely this, that it is absolutely unwavering in its stance. We can understand this through an example. An individual says 2 plus 2 makes 4, another one says, no, 2 plus 2 makes 3, and these two are disputing on this matter. A mediator says to them that, sirs, the matter will not be resolved by this kind of intransigence. Both of you should yield your positions. You should compromise on this, that 2 plus 2 makes 3.5. It is obvious now that the individual who claimed that 2 plus 2 makes 3 loses nothing by this. He was asserting a falsehood before and will still be wrong. But the individual who said 2 plus 2 makes 4, was stating a matter of haqq and truth. If he accepts that 2 plus 2 makes 3.5, then this will remain neither haqq nor truth. This has turned into wrong and batil. There can be hundreds of wrong answers to a sum, but the correct answer is one, and only one. This is the reason that haqq simply cannot compromise with batil. It is not a question of obstinacy, it is the natural demand of haqq. This is the state of affairs regarding the mutual relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims. Following this, let us move on. The next verse after this is, Allah has set a seal on their hearts and on their hearing, and on their eyes is a veil, great is the penalty of hell for them. 2:7. This is the common translation of this verse. 3.211 Dilemma. Keep this translation in mind and then reflect again on this predicament which we had presented in connection with the common translation of the previous verse, 2:6. From the traditional translations of these two verses, it seems as if for those people who are kafir, it is the same to them whether you warn them or not, they will never have iman. This is because Allah has sealed their ears and hearts and has placed veils over their eyes, i.e., these people adopt kafir, and do not accept iman, because Allah has placed seals on their hearts, and this is why it is all the same to them whether you warn them or not. Have you seen that the dilemma which was difficult before has become even more problematic with this translation? From this man inevitably reaches the conclusion that what possible fault is there in this of these people, they are helpless and constrained in this matter. But this difficulty becomes a conundrum when the next words are also linked to this translation, that there will be a severe punishment for them. The question which will arise in connection with this is that when Allah Himself has placed a seal on their hearts, and as a result they no longer retain the ability that they could have accepted iman and hence they remained kafir, then why should they be given a punishment? Is this not such a matter that it leaves you holding your head in your hands in bafflement? An even clearer example of the difficulties which confront us as a result of these kinds of traditional translations appears in verse 16:93 of Sura An-Nahl. It is traditionally translated as, "If Allah so willed, He could make you all one people, but He leaves straying whom He pleases, according to His law, and He guides whom He pleases, but you shall certainly be called to account for all your actions." 16:93. If Allah had wished He could have made you all into one ummah, there would have been no kafir or mu'min, but Allah misguides whoever He wishes, and gives guidance to whoever He wishes. From this the matter becomes clear that choosing guidance and misguidance is not within the control of man himself. Allah guides whoever He wishes and misguides whoever He wishes. But following this, the last part of the verse, Allah has stated, "But you will be questioned that why did you do this?" Have you noticed what has transpired? First it is stated that Allah misguides whoever He wishes and guides whoever He wishes, and after that it is stated, you will be questioned as to why you adopted the path of misguidance. Having looked at the traditional translations of the Quran, and the results of understanding them superficially in this way, we now come to the correct meanings of the Quran. 3.22 Correct interpretation. The Quran has stated in verses 2:6-7, that Allah put seals on the hearts of those people who choose kafir, but at another place Allah has made the matter clear in a few words that, "Nay, Allah has set the seal on their hearts because of their kafir." 4:155. These seals become imposed because of their kafir, i.e., it is not that Allah Himself places seals on their hearts and that is why they adopt the path of kafir. Instead, since they choose the path of kafir, hence seals become imposed on their hearts. Now we come to verse 16:93 of Surah An-Nahl, whose wrong interpretation becomes the cause for creating scores of misunderstandings. By observing conflicts and chaos, tyranny and coercion, injustice and exploitation universally in the world, many people who are sensitive but have a superficial view and understanding will generally be heard saying that why did Allah not do this, that He should have created human beings in such a way that they simply could not have resorted to tyranny and oppression, all human beings would have kept following the virtuous path. The Quran has stated that this was not at all difficult for Allah to do, that He could have constrained human beings just like other things of the universe to follow one path only. 16:93. But the program of His Mashiach was not for this. He did not create man constrained in this way, He created him possessing the freedom to choose and with the ability to make decisions. It is the consequence of this same ability to choose and decide that when he comes to a crossroad in life, both paths, right and wrong, are shown clearly to him. And shown him the two paths. 90:10. And it is said to him that he can adopt whichever path he wishes. In other words, if he wishes he can adopt the wrong path, and if he wishes he can set out on the right path. 16:93. But along with this, he is also told what the consequence will be of treading on the wrong path, and what will be the fruits of following the right path. Whichever path he selects, the results of that will appear before him. This is what is called accountability, or questioning, in the terminology of the Quran. But you shall certainly be called to account for all your actions. 16:93. As has been explained previously, these consequences of human deeds are not imposed from somewhere outside as a punishment. Every consequence is concealed within the deed itself, just as the mango tree is concealed within the mango stone, and the poplar tree in the poplar seed. What happens is only that the deed takes place first, and the consequence appears later. Regarding the existence of this intrinsic link between the deed and its consequence, it is stated, "Let every self look to what provision it has sent for the morrow." 59:18. 3.23 Mutual connection between the deed and its result. It is incumbent on every individual that he should check in advance what he has sent for his tomorrow. The meaning of tomorrow is that the result of a deed appears after its commission. At another place it is stated, "The day when man will see the deeds which his hands have sent forth." 78:40. when man will see with his own eyes what he has previously been sending forth for himself by his own hands. In this connection, another matter requiring to be understood is why Allah relates these consequences to himself. For example, in this same verse, 16:93, it is stated that whichever individual desires to tread on the right path, Allah guides him towards the right path, whoever desires to adopt the wrong path, he shows him the wrong path. Or, for example, it is stated in verse 2:7, that Allah has placed seals on their hearts, though we have seen that Allah himself has stated that these seals are a consequence of the kufr of these people themselves. The matter is clear, an action is initiated from the direction of man, and its consequences are determined according to the established law of Allah. The law of Allah begins its pursuit, you could say, according to whatever kind of act is committed by man, and ultimately seizes him, i.e., the consequence of this deed becomes established according to it and appears before him. For example, in relation to the wrong path of Bani Israel, it is stated, "Then when they went astray, Allah let their hearts go astray," 61:5. When they themselves became warped, Allah made their hearts warped. Or, at another place it is stated, "Then they turn aside, Allah has turned their hearts, from the light," 9:127. When they turned their faces away from the path defined by Allah, Allah turned their hearts in that same direction. This is that reality which has been detailed comprehensively in these words. Verily never will Allah change the condition of a people until they change it themselves, what is in their hearts. 13:11. Allah does not change the conditions and circumstances of a nation until the time that the nation does not produce change within itself, i.e., whatever kind of change that nation brings about within itself, the law of Allah will cause it to become exactly that. In other words, in this world of efforts and deeds the initiative lies in the hands of man and the law of Allah follows it. Whatever man wishes to become, the law of Allah makes him the same. And whatever he becomes in this way, like the fruit of a tree, he keeps displaying his traits through his own self. This is the conclusion and outcome of the issue of taqdeer, fate. Iqbal has explained this in a very attractive and comprehensive style when he states that, in other words, the matter is very delicate and profound, but this secret is hidden within a word, and that word is this, that if you change, then your taqdeer will change accordingly, i.e., however you turn out to be, your taqdeer becomes the same, that same kind of law of Allah becomes applicable to you. If you make yourself dust on a path, then even the slightest gust of wind will whirl you around and disperse you. But if you create hardness like a stone within yourself, then whichever mirror you strike against, it will shatter into pieces. If you make yourself a dewdrop, then you will fall down to the ground from the heights of the heavens, and the tiniest of rays of the sun will end your being and existence. But if you transform yourself into a boundless ocean, then you will achieve eternal existence. However, if for some reason you have fallen into an abyss, then do not just sit there shedding tears blaming your taqdeer, nor deceive yourself by saying that since Allah has written it like this in my kismet, so what can I do? This is false. In whatever state you are at this moment in this time, Allah's law is being imposed on you accordingly. If you desire that some other law of Allah should become applicable to you, then change your own self, the other law of Allah will become applied to you. There are infinite laws with Allah, whatever kind of individual a man himself wishes to become, the same kind of law becomes applicable to him. Hence, when Allah relates some deed of man to himself, this is what it means, i.e., he did this, so we did it like this. An individual dies by swallowing poison, this incident can be narrated in many different styles. It could even be said about this that the poison killed him, also that he killed himself by taking poison, and also that he ingested poison and Allah killed him. And as a principle, also that whoever swallows poison, Allah will kill him. 3.24 Allah relates deeds towards himself. In other words, whatever happens in the universe according to the established laws of Allah, he also relates these directly to himself. For example, rain falls according to the established law of nature of Allah, and these laws are so immutable that whoever acquires accurate knowledge of it, he can forecast when and where rain will fall. Despite this, Allah relates this to himself and states, "It is he who sends down rain," 31:34. Or, "In the rain which Allah sends down from the skies," 2:164. So much so, that he even says, "It is Allah who made your habitations homes of rest and quiet for you, and made for you, out of the skins of animals, tents for dwellings," 16:80. Even though it is obvious that human beings construct their tents and houses themselves. Whatever man does according to his natural abilities, Allah also relates this to himself. For example, leaving aside wahi, man acquires all kinds of knowledge through his own exertions, but because the basic potential to acquire knowledge is bestowed by Allah, hence he states, "Taught man that which he knew not." 96:5. Allah taught man all that which he was not aware of. He even says, "He who taught, the use of, the pen," 96:4. Allah taught man to write with a pen, although it is obvious that a child learns to write with a pen himself. In connection with documentation relating to buying and selling, it is stated in Surah Al-Baqarah, "Let not the scribe refuse to write as Allah has taught him," 2:282. It should never be the case that the scribe should refuse to write this documentation in the way that Allah has taught him. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, regarding hunting by dogs, it is stated, "And what you have taught your trained hunting animals, to catch, in the manner directed to you by Allah," 5:4. It is obvious that Allah does not teach hunters how dogs need to be trained to hunt. They learn this technique themselves. But since the potential to acquire knowledge is fundamentally bestowed by Allah, therefore Allah relates these matters to himself. This is that reality which Ibrahim has described in these words, "Who gives me food and drink, and when I am ill, it is he who cures me." 26:79-80. From these verses it is evident that Allah relates the effects which materialize via the laws established by Allah to himself, whether these are laws of nature dispersed throughout the pages of nature, or are preserved as the values and laws of Allah in the Quran. Following this, it will become easy to understand why he stated that Allah places seals on their hearts, 2:7, or whoever wishes to be misguided, Allah takes him towards misguidance, etc. If verses of the Quran in which Allah has related some matter towards his direction are translated like this, that Allah does this according to his law, or that according to Allah's law this takes place, then all difficulties are removed. This is the technique which I have adopted in this respect. 3.25 The meanings of Kadam and Taba. The words Kadam and Taba have appeared in verses like Kadam Allahu Allah Kalya by him, etc. When you fill a bottle with something and close it with a cork, and then for further security also place a seal on it, this is called Kadama, i.e. to close something completely. From this the meaning of the finality of messengerhood will also become clear. Sometimes we close an envelope and seal it with wax and then using a stamp engrave our name in it. Doing this is called taba. The issue is the same, i.e. to close something in such a way that nothing can enter it. Let us see how the state of the human heart becomes like this, that state in which nothing of knowledge and reason can enter. It is stated in Surah Al-Mu'min about Pharaoh and his companions. Such, as dispute about the signs of Allah, without any authority that has reached them. Grievous and odious, is such conduct, in the sight of Allah and of the Mu'mineen. Thus does Allah seal up every heart, of arrogant and obstinate transgressors. 40:35. These are those people who keep opposing Allah's laws without any authority or evidence. Just think how deserving of condemnation this path is. They do this merely due to egotism, arrogance, and pride. After this it is stated that in this way Allah put seals on the hearts of such people. 3.26 How hearts are sealed. It is stated in Surah Al-Rum, "Verily we have propounded for men, in this Quran, every kind of parable, but if you bring to them any sign, the kuffar are sure to say, you do nothing but talk vanities. 30:58. In order to make people understand, we have used various styles and techniques in the Quran, but their condition is such that when verses from it are presented to them, they will declare without any thought or understanding that you are dishonest and a follower of lies. After this it is stated, thus does Allah seal up the hearts of those who understand not. 30:59. In this way Allah puts seals on the hearts of those people who keep on calling others liars without knowledge and evidence. In Surah Al-An'am it is stated, of them there are some who pretend to listen to you, but we have thrown veils on their hearts, so they understand it not, and deafness in their ears. If they saw every one of the signs, they will not believe in them, insomuch that when they come to you, they but dispute with you. The Kafireen say, these are nothing but tales of the ancients. 6:25. This is how seals become applied to their hearts. This same reality is described at another place in the following words. And among them are men who listen to you, but in the end, when they go out from you, they say to those who have received knowledge, what is it he said just then? Such are men whose hearts Allah has sealed, and who follow their own lusts. 47:16. While sitting in your gatherings, they remain lost in their own thoughts, and when they stand up and leave, then they ask of those who had listened attentively to these matters, what was this individual saying in there? These are the people on whose heart seals become imposed according to the law of Allah, and they keep on blindly following their own desires. The state of their stubbornness is such that they say with great pride. They say, our hearts are under veils, concealed, from that to which you invite us, and in our ears is a deafness, and between us and you is a screen, so you do what you will, for us, we shall do what we will. 41:5, see also, 2:88. O Rasool, you keep preaching to us day and night, but you should know that there can be no impact on us, our hearts are wrapped in covers, our ears are becoming plugged, in fact, you could say that between us and you there is a veil. Therefore, do whatever you wish, we are not about to abandon our program. Verse 45:23, from Surah Al-Yathiyah has already been quoted, in which it is stated, then see you such a one as takes as his God his own vain desire? Allah has, knowing him as such, left him astray, and sealed his hearing and his heart, and understanding, and put a cover on his sight. 45:23. This is also stated in Surah An-Nahl thus. This because they love the life of this world better than the hereafter, and Allah will not guide those who are kafir. They are those whose hearts, ears, and eyes Allah has sealed up, and they take no heed. 16:107-108. From these verses you will have seen that when man does not make use of reflection and reasoning, then this variability of reflection and reasoning becomes disabled. 3.27 Heart locking itself through own lock. This supreme fact is expressed in extremely concise words in Surah Muhammad in the following way. Do they not then earnestly seek to understand the Quran, or are their hearts locked up by them? 47:24. In this verse one such point has been mentioned which I do not wish to move on from without illuminating further. What has been stated is ala kalibin akfalia. The translation of these words is difficult, but what is being said is that on their hearts are the locks of their own hearts. The meaning is that the locks on the hearts do not become applied from somewhere externally, these locks are molded within the workshop of these hearts themselves. The heart installs these locks manufactured by itself on itself, and then shuts itself inside. You can understand it as the following example: an individual enters a room and bolts the door from the inside, and then shrieks and wails, "How can I get out? Take me out," even though he has bolted it himself and he himself can open it. And this is that reality which appears before us at another place in the form of a concrete statement where the Quran has declared, "By no means, but on their hearts is the stain of the ill which they do." 83:14. Nay, the matter is not that which most people commonly understand it to be. The issue is that their own deeds, by becoming rust, bind to their hearts. This is what is called seals imposed from the direction of Allah. From these explanations it has become evident what the meaning is of verse 2:7. In the verse prior to this it was stated that those people who deliberately adopt the path of kufr and do not wish to hear anything whatsoever against their path, it is equal to them whether they are warned about the destructive consequences of their path or not, they will simply not be agreeable to accepting the true message. The consequence of this endeavor of theirs is stated to be that little by little their condition becomes such that their very ability to reason, think, listen, and observe becomes paralyzed. 2:7. And because all of this is their own doing, they will have to face the consequence of this, and that consequence is a mighty chastisement. Great is the penalty they incur. 2:7. 3.28 Meaning of Azab. The frequency with which the word Azab has appeared in the Quran, it is with the same frequency and intensity that its erroneous concept is prevalent among us. First of all, that among us, Azab only commences after death from the grave, Azab of the grave, Azab of Hashir, Azab of Jahannam, and the depiction of this Azab in the minds is as though policemen are hanging a criminal upside down, skinning him or marking his skin with hot metallic rods, and he is shrieking and wailing with this unbearable agony. As far as worldly Azab is concerned, its position is like this, that if there is an earthquake somewhere, then it is said that this is an Azab from Allah. If there are floods, then it is an Azab from Allah. If there is no rain, then this is also an Azab from Allah. If an epidemic of plague or cholera occurs, then this is an Azab from Allah, etc., etc. But the form of this Azab is strange. The criminal or villain happens to be in London, and the earthquake occurs in Mexico. Debauchery and depravity take place in Russia and floods appear in Pakistan, i.e. if such types of catastrophes occur in some part of the world, it is said that this is an Azab from Allah which has appeared due to crimes and evil. And for protection or alleviation, it is ordained that you, the addressees, should seek the forgiveness of Allah. Ask for forgiveness for your sins so that this Azab of Allah can be removed. 3.29 Natural disasters. The Quran has mentioned these kinds of disasters in connection with the circumstances and condition of former nations. What its correct interpretation is, and what the connection and relationship is between the deeds of nations and these kinds of physical disasters, details of these will be given at their respective places. As far as the modern era is concerned, it is obvious that these kinds of natural disasters keep occurring in every country. Those countries which take precautionary measures in the light of scientific research remain protected from their disastrous effects. Those who do not do this, become destroyed. Human knowledge is gradually progressing forward. As a result of this, he has overcome many of these kinds of disasters, he will overcome the rest as well. When Allah informed man that we have subjugated the system of the universe to your control, what this means is that man was bestowed with this ability that he could harness the forces of nature. Details of this will appear later. Hence, to state about these kinds of universal disasters that Allah makes men suffer in an Azab due to their sins is incorrect. What happens is that due to contravention of the divine principles and values, the morals of a nation deteriorate. The foremost consequence of this is that the concept of justice disappears from this nation. This nation first of all adopts this practice of injustice against other nations and keeps promoting it by terming it as the fervour of patriotism. Gradually, these germs also penetrate within their own selves, and in this way lawlessness spreads in this society, the consequence of which is chaos and conflict in every facet of life. This also affects their organization and management, the outcome of which is that that nation simply does not remain capable of facing natural disasters. This is the link between the moral decline of nations and the devastations resulting from natural universal events. In other words, natural disasters, e.g. floods, earthquakes, etc., do not result from human sins, these materialize according to the laws of nature. The consequence of human sins, due to transgression of moral values, is that this nation neither retains the ability to counter and mitigate these natural disasters, nor has the potential to rectify the subsequent devastation resulting from these events. As far as punishment in the hereafter is concerned, it has already been stated that the state and environment of that life are such abstract realities which we cannot understand tangibly. These have been described in the Quran in the form of metaphors and similes. In light of these, we will explain what their meanings are in their respective places according to our vision and understanding. After this introduction, let us see what is the Quranic meaning of azab. In verse 1:5 of Surah Al-Fatiha we have seen that, according to the Quran, the concept of life is dynamic, it neither moves in circles nor is it static. By traversing through various evolutionary stages, life has reached the status of Adam from its initial point. This destination is not the ultimate end of the journey. In order to pass through further evolutionary stages it has to advance forward. And this process also continues beyond death. In fact, you could say that only the initial phase of the lengthy process of the evolution of Adam has commenced. It is evident from this that the onward continual progression of life is its success, and its becoming static at some point is its extreme failure and despair. As long as life remains like a babbling stream, it is life. When it halts somewhere, becoming a stagnant pond, then its fundamental characteristic, flowing, firstly becomes restricted, and after this it ceases. The Quran has termed life becoming static at some point as azab. Among the Arabs, due to the aridness and intensity of the heat of the deserts, their animals had to remain thirsty, and on many occasions the intensity of thirst used to reach to such an extent that the animal would even give up eating and drinking, and in this way the ability to move around no longer remained within it. This condition of its was termed as azab. It is from this respect that the Quran has called Jahannam as being Jahim e.g. 44:56, the meaning of Jahim is an impediment, or to become an obstruction. 3.30 Life becoming static. Within our nation, which is unfortunately stagnant at one point for centuries, the very awareness itself of the painful despair of the soul resulting from dynamism having switched to inertia is dead. We have come to believe that this, in fact, is how life is supposed to be. The condition of such pain and agony should be inquired from someone who is sprinting in a sports ground together with other runners, and he can see that he will forge ahead of all of them, but en route some obstruction appears, and thus instead of going forward, he halts and becomes stationary. And then he witnesses with his own eyes, how by advancing forward, those players who were far behind him have reached the destination. This is that azab which simply cannot be put into words, it can only be imagined. In this world, humiliation and backwardness, subjugation and dependency, weakness and absence of strength, helplessness and vulnerability, poverty and destitution, and after this cowardice and lack of courage, in fact, absence of honor and disgrace are the natural consequences of this inertia, and therefore the various facets of this azab. This is the azab of this world. Following this, the question of the azab in the life of the hereafter comes before us. Details about them will be given at their respective places. At this point it is enough to say that the Quran has portrayed it metaphorically and has stated at a fundamental level that it will be said, "You were heedless of this, now have we removed your veil, and sharp is your sight this day." 50:22. Over there the veils which lie over the eyes will become lifted, and the vision will become so sharp that it will be able to pierce even through layers of steel, whereupon there will be such an acute awareness of the loss resulting from remaining inert and falling behind in the dynamic sphere of life, that upon seeing it, man will emit a painful cry and will say, "Woe unto me! Would that I were mere dust." 78:40. I wish that I were just a lump of mud instead of a self-conscious human being. Next, we will describe some examples of this azab which are related to life in this world. The Quran explains the collective forms of most azab. 3.30.1 Humiliation and disgrace. Although the Quran has described various forms and characteristics of azab, stating azab-e-azim, a very severe punishment, at some places, and azab-e-alim, a very painful punishment. At other places, for us the severest and worst form is that which it has termed as azab un-muhin, a humiliating azab, 22:57 and other verses. The reality is that if the honor and self-respect of a nation is not completely dead, then there can be no punishment more chastising and instructive than that of humiliation and disgrace. It has reiterated this fact at a number of places in the account of Bani Israel, that the consequence of their continual transgression and criminal proclivity was shame is pitched over them, like a tent, wherever they are found, 3:112. Wherever they went, the damning azab of humiliation followed them like a shadow. We have said above that when dynamism no longer remains in a nation, and it stagnates at some place, then the consequence of this is that ruin and destruction which the Quran has termed as azab. It is on this basis that the Quran also calls this maskanat, 2:61, along with humiliation, when explaining the azab in which the nation of Bani Israel was gripped, i.e., that their grandeur and greatness was converted into humiliation and lowliness, and their dynamism and energy became static and frozen. Referring to this conduct of theirs, that they had iman in one part of the divine code and used to reject the other part, it is stated that this was not only about Bani Israel, rather. Then is it only a part of the book that you believe in, and do you reject the rest? But what is the reward for those among you who behave like this but disgrace in this life? And on the day of judgment they shall be consigned to the most grievous penalty, 2:85. Whichever nation adopts such a path, its outcome will be nothing other than that it will be humiliated and disgraced in the life of this world and gripped in the severest azab on the day of judgment. 3.30.2 Subjugation. The worst form of humiliation is that some nation becomes a subject and slave of other nations. This is what the condition of Bani Israel had been reduced to in Egypt. The nation of Pharaoh had made them their subjects. Thus, when Musa went to Pharaoh, this is exactly what he had said to him. Send forth, therefore, Bani Israel with us, and afflict them not, 20:47. Let the people of Bani Israel go with us and do not keep them chained in the iron grip of azab. This, elimination of slavery and subjugation, is what the Quran has termed as the changing and replacing of nations, i.e., the replacement of one nation by another. The rare form of this changeover is that a victorious nation turns out the defeated nation from their places of abode and their land, and in their place it establishes itself and occupies their land, as the Aryans did in India to the original inhabitants, the Draorans. But its common form is that the defeated nation loses its wealth and prosperity and the victorious nation becomes its master. This is also the replacement of one nation by another nation. In Sura At-Tawbah the Jamaat-e-Mu'minin is instructed to come out for jihad in the cause of Allah. Unless you go forth, He will punish you with a grievous penalty, and put others in your place, but him you would not harm in the least. For Allah has power over all things. 9:39. If you digress from this, then remember, Allah will put you in a chastising azab, and this azab will be that another nation will take your place, and you will not be able to do anything to Allah. This is because the rule of law operates in Allah's system and this law possesses so much established power that none can tamper in it. In another verse it is stated, Behold, you are those invited to spend, of your substance, in the way of Allah, but among you are some that are niggardly. But any who are niggardly are so at the expense of their own selves. But Allah is free of all wants, and it is you that are needy. If you turn back, from the path, He will substitute in your stead another people, then they would not be like you. 47:38. You are those people who, when you are asked to keep your treasure chests open for the establishment and strengthening of the divine system, in the path of Allah, there are indeed some among you who start to act in a niggardly fashion. The one who is niggardly is entangled in this self-deception that he keeps his wealth for himself and deprives others of it, but he does not even understand this much that the consequence of this behavior of his will be that he himself will also become deprived of these possessions and wealth. Say to them that by inviting you to spend in the cause of Allah, He is not asking anything from you for His own self. It is your own benefit in this. he is free from all wants, it is you who are needy. Remember, if you turn away from the invitation to spend and devise ways to avoid it, then the consequence of this will be that another nation will take your place and it will not be similar to you. 3.30.3 Sectarianism. Allah has termed the Jamaat-e-Momineen as one ummah and has repeatedly stated that division into parties and sectarianism is kufr and shirk, and its consequence is a humiliating azab of destruction and ruin. In Surah Al-Imran it is stated, "Be not like those who are divided amongst themselves and fall into disputations after receiving clear signs, for them is a dreadful penalty." 3:105. There are various forms and manifestations of the azab which becomes imposed as a result of mutual dissensions, which the Quran has expressed in Surah Al-An'am in this way. Say, He has power to send calamities on you, from above and below, or to cover you with confusion in party strife, giving you a taste of mutual vengeance, each from the other. See how we explain the signs by various symbols, that they may understand. 6:65. This azab has different faces. Sometimes it is the case that vices become commonplace among the upper strata of society, and as a consequence of these, the society becomes destroyed. Sometimes anarchy spreads among the lower classes and they cause destruction, and sometimes it happens that both these classes become divided into different parties and begin fighting with each other and are destroyed in this way. Just see how we bring to attention the various aspects of our laws so that mankind can understand the matter well. This is a state of civil war, but sometimes this destruction appears as a defeat at the hands of other nations. Hence, in Surah At-Tawbah the Jamaat-e-Momineen is instructed that those opponents who have reached to the battlefield against you, fight against them. Allah wishes to make them suffer azab through your hands, and to make them humiliated and disgraced in the world. 9:14. See also, 9:52. 3.30.4 Fear and grief. This is that form of azab in which the issue is ended with one blow. But even more soul-destroying than this is the azab in which a sense of fear prevails on the nerves of a nation. The Quran has informed us that the essential outcome of Iman and Salih deeds is, "On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve." 2:38. Such a nation will neither be gripped in the azab of khawf, fear, nor will it be infected with the anguish produced by huzn, grief. Khawf is commonly created by external dangers, and huzn is that inner state in which man remains engulfed due to anxiety and grief. This is that Jahannam about which it is stated that, in which they will then neither die nor live. 87:13. In which man neither remains alive, nor does he even die. In another verse, death will come to him from every quarter, yet will he not die. 14:17. Iman and Salih deeds keep a nation protected from both these forms of azab. In contrast to this, in Surah An-Nahl the Quran has warned in a metaphorical manner. Allah sets forth a parable. A city enjoying security and quiet, abundantly supplied with sustenance from every place, yet was it ungrateful for the favors of Allah, so Allah made it taste of hunger and terror, in extremes, like a garment, closing in at it from every side, because of the evil which its people wrought. 16:112. There was a town whose inhabitants enjoyed both peace and tranquility, i.e., they had neither any kind of fear nor grief. The state of their prosperity was such that bounteous risk was being attracted towards them from all directions. They flouted these bounties of Allah, did kafir, and as a consequence they were caught in the azab of hunger and fear, and this was the outcome of their self-created system which they had established in opposition to the system of Allah. 3.30.5 Azab of hunger. From this it is evident that hunger and fear are Allah's azab, i.e., dearth of risk and threat of external dangers. With regard to dearth of risk, it has stated in clear words, "But whosoever turns away from my message, verily his sustenance is narrowed down, and we shall raise him up blind on the day of judgment." 20:124. Whoever eschews our laws, his sustenance becomes restricted, and the one whose sustenance is restricted here is also resurrected blind on the day of judgment. At another place it is stated, "But those who were blind in this world, will be blind in the hereafter," 17:72. Regarding the azab of hunger, details will be given in connection with the economic program of the Quran. In verse 16:112, quoted previously from Sura An-Nahl, it is stated that nations fall into the azab of hunger and fear due to transgression of na'ima, bounties and blessings. This same fact is noted by the Quran at another place in a very dramatic style, when it states, "Have you not turned your vision to those who have changed the favor of Allah into rejection and caused their people to descend to the house of perdition? Into hell? They will burn therein, an evil place to stay in." 14:28-29. Have you ever paid attention to the state of those people who adopted kufr towards Allah's bounties and as a consequence deposited the caravan of their nation in that market where there was no buyer for this commerce, i.e., deposited them in hell, which is an extremely dreadful place to abide in. 3.31 Worldly hell. As has been stated before, a detailed discussion about Jannat and Jahannam will come at their own place. Here, it is sufficient to say that the Quran has declared, "But, of a surety, hell will encompass the Kafirin." 29:54. Jahannam is not somewhere far away, it continuously encircles the kufr in its sphere. And they will not be able to keep away therefrom. 82:16. Even now they are not hidden from its view, it is keeping watch over them. But because veils of ignorance and vested interests are covering their eyes, this is why they cannot see it. What happens in that which is called the day of accountability is that, "And hellfire shall be placed in full view for all to see," 79:36. That hell which previously is invisible to the sight bursts into the full view of seeing eyes. As has been noted earlier, destruction and ruin do not descend on nations unjustly, nor does any nation receive success and ascendancy as bakshish. In this world of effort and deeds there is a continuous clash between opposing forces, of haqq and batil. In this clash the nation which has the ability to remain alive and progress further, remains alive and advances ahead. The one which does not contain this potential becomes vanquished and is annihilated. This is that fact which the Quran has mentioned in a few concise words in Surah Anfal at that place where it is said to the Jamaat-e-Mu'minin that we have not drawn you into the battlefield for nothing. There is a specific purpose for this, and that is that those who died might die after a clear sign, and those who lived might live after a clear sign. 8:42. Whoever is to be killed, should be killed due to an evident reason, and whoever is to stay alive, should also remain alive based on a clear reason. 3.32 Life and death on evidence-based vision. This is that very principle for which the Quran has quoted as evidence details of former nations with such focus and emphasis. The aim of describing these details is to inform how the nation holding on to haqq and truth remains victorious and successful, and how nations who are flag-bearers of the batil system become destroyed and annihilated in such a way that afterwards only the ruins of their destroyed habitations survive to mourn their demise. 40:82-85. As has been noted before, these destructions do not appear for no reason. Nations are warned beforehand that the consequence of the system which you have adopted is destruction and ruin. They are given this warning repeatedly, but when they do not hearken to this and continue to advance on their wrong path, then they fall into that hell about which they were warned. It is stated in Surah Bani Israel, "Nor would we visit with our wrath until we had sent a messenger, to give warning." 17:15. At another place it is stated, "Never did we destroy a population but had its warners, by way of reminder, and we never are unjust." 26:208-209. We do not destroy any habitation until those messengers are not sent among them who warn them about the consequences of their wrong conduct and remind them in order that they are not kept in ignorance. We are not unjust that we would destroy a nation for no rhyme or reason. The principle for the life and destruction of nations is very clear and based on reality. Medical science informs us that the environment in which man resides and the atmosphere in which he breathes is filled with billions of harmful germs. These germs get inside man where his power of immunity confronts them. If his immunity is strong, then it will kill these germs itself, and that individual remains healthy. If it has become somewhat weakened, then these harmful germs overwhelm him, and this is termed as illness. Treatment is based on this principle that the degree of immunity of that individual should be boosted, so that he becomes enabled to fight these illnesses. But if the situation is such that immunity keeps on diminishing, and harmful elements keep on overwhelming, then a day arrives when the power of immunity loses the final battle. This is termed death. 3.33 Law of Protection and Respite. Just like individuals, nations also have a similar situation. Their power of self-protection increases in relation to the extent to which they engage in constructive work, and as a result destructive elements do not overpower them. But if the situation is such that the constructive tasks of a nation keep on declining, and destructive works and actions keep multiplying, then that nation willingly sets out on the road to decline, and ultimately becomes defeated and subjugated, destroyed and annihilated. The Quran has elucidated this with the example of the scales of a balance rising and falling. It states, "Those whose scale, of good, will be heavy, will prosper." 7:8. The individual or nation whose scale of righteousness is heavier remains successful and prosperous. And then it states, "Those whose scale will be light, will find themselves in perdition." 7:9. The one whose scale is lighter, destroys itself. It is obvious that this process of scales being lighter or heavier does not reach to its completion in one day. A long duration of time is required for this. In the terminology of the Quran, this is called the time of respite or ajal, duration, during which there is an allowance and possibility for that nation to once again increase its constructive and protective potentials and save itself from the impending destruction. But for the nation which does not do this, its time of respite comes to an end, and it becomes destroyed. In the words of the Quran, "To every people is a term appointed, when their term is reached, not an hour can they cause delay, nor, an hour, can they advance it in anticipation." 1049, see also, 734. It is stated in response to those people who out of ignorance say that azab becomes imposed from the direction of Allah, i.e., there is neither any procedure and law established for it, nor any principle and criterion. He imposes azab on whoever he wishes. That what can Allah gain by your punishment, if you are grateful and you have iman? Nay, it is Allah that recognizes all good, and knows all things. 4:147. If you utilize the bounties as directed, and have iman in the eternal truths, then what will Allah gain by punishing you? Instead, He bestows full recompense as a return for balanced conduct, and His being all-knowing means that not even anyone's smallest deed can remain hidden from His sight. 99:7-8. We have described above in what forms azab descends on nations which are prone to decline and ultimately becoming destroyed, but what has not emerged in a definitive form is what are those causes on the basis of which nations initially become prone to decline and then after this become destroyed. These causes will be found in a dispersed form in the Quran and also from time to time in this book. These nations can be definitively divided into three categories. 1. Regarding those nations which do not harness the forces of nature. The Quran has declared that the power to harness nature is within the realm of human potentials, hence those nations which do not make use of this power cannot even be declared to be included in the domain of humanity, never mind be counted among nations which are alive. These are commonly nations immersed in religion, before whom everything in the world is to be despised, and every attraction is deserving of condemnation. By shunning the paths of life-giving realities, they remain engrossed in the nebulous world of self-concocted holy tales. 2. Those nations which harness the forces of nature, but instead of employing them under the obedience of the permanent divine values use them for their own vested interests. The consequence of which is mutual conflict and confrontation among nations, it appears as if these nations are heading towards lofty heights, but this rise of theirs is transitory. Disdain of ethical values places a time bomb in the construction of their foundations, and when the time arrives for it to explode, the whole structure of their culture and civilization comes swiftly tumbling down. Regarding the nations of Ad, Thamud, etc., the Quran has informed us that they were possessors of greatly enviable power and prosperity, authority and supremacy, and along with this very aware and conscious, and were also possessors of knowledge and skill. But when they transgressed against the divine laws and refused to establish a system according to these, then neither their power and supremacy was able to protect them from this destruction, nor was their knowledge and skill of any use to them. And that destruction which they used to mock at encircled them from every direction. 46:26. The current nations of the West are its living examples. They have harnessed the forces of nature with such a degree of vastness, depths, and heights which are unparalleled, and in this way have encompassed every corner of the planet. And since they kept advancing in their control of the planet, the world therefore assumed that decline cannot affect these nations. But they divorced the divine values from their life. And as a consequence, the hell in which they are caught at the present time can be gauged to some degree from the cries and screams which are arising spontaneously from the hearts of visionaries and producing tremors in the environment of the world. 3. In the third category are those nations which, having harnessed the forces of nature, utilize its benefits according to the divine values for the general good of the whole of mankind. As long as these nations remain firm on this path, not even a shadow of decline can approach them. Details of this can be found at numerous places within the Quran under Iman and Salih deeds. At this point we have confined ourselves to this azab, i.e., the destructive consequences of wrong deeds which appear in this world. Discussions about the azab in the hereafter will be discussed at their respective places. It is important to clarify this much here, that the punishment meted out by courts for crimes is also termed as azab by the Quran, e.g. 24:2, 24:8. 3.34 Summary of Chapter 3, verses 2:6-7. This is the detailed meaning of verses 2:6-7 of Surah Al-Baqarah according to my vision. I have given a summary of these meanings in the following words in Mafhum al-Quran, Revised Edition. In contrast to the Muttaqin, the other group is of those people who consider the physical life of this world as being the only life. That is why they neither accept the existence of the human self, nor are persuaded of the need for the divine values for its development. To gain the benefits of physical life is their aim in life, and using all kinds of tactics for the acquisition of this is their maslak. Until the time that they do not change this fundamental view of life, it makes no difference to them whether they are warned about the dangerous pitfalls of the path or not. They can never come to the right path. For the individual who is bent upon committing suicide, advising him not to take poison because it is fatal is futile. Such advice can only be profitable for those who wish to remain alive. The consequence of following this path is that these people lose the potential to observe and reason, and understand and reflect, like a man who becomes mad with rage. Such thick covers of base desires are drawn over their vision that they cannot even see the signs of the path. Their ears are so blocked up that despite the sound of the bells, they cannot locate the caravan. Such covers are wrapped around their hearts and minds that despite reflecting on the surrounding environment, they cannot determine the correct direction. The consequence of this is that destruction which materializes according to the law of requital of Allah. In this way these people deprive themselves of the true delights of life and descend into the hell of ruin and destruction. How dreadful is this end of theirs!